This book, the Bible, begins with a marriage in the book of Genesis, chapter 1. Male and female, He created them. He made them to be united in marriage, it says in Genesis 2, 23 through 25. The book begins with a marriage in Genesis. It ends with a marriage in Revelation. Marriage and family are central to all of what God's doing on planet Earth. And I caught that picture from the Scriptures while at Dallas Seminary. And Campus Crusade for Christ had grown leaps and bounds in the late 60s, early 70s. It had thousands of college students coming on staff. Almost would like to refer to it as the happy hunting grounds of finding a spouse. And they'd find a spouse and run off to spiritual battle together in marriage. And we had some casualties. And so they sent 3 staff persons, Nay Bailey, who was a single woman, and Dave and Sandy Sunday, to the U.S. Congress on the Family in 1975. They heard Dr. Hendricks speak at that Congress, and he made this statement. He said, in the city of Dallas, Texas, it takes 3 weeks of intensive training to become a garbage collector. But about all that you have to do to get married in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is to stand before a preacher or a justice of the peace and grunt, and you're in. And he said the church and the body of Christ must do something to prepare single people and engaged couples for marriage. And so they came back to the leadership of Crusade bearing this message. And the leadership of Campus Crusade for Christ said no, because Campus Crusade had started 60 or 70 new ministries in a period of time, and they didn't want another ministry. And at that point, Nay Bailey began to cry. And as I recall it, she said she cried so hard she laid her head down on the table and was weeping. Well, what do men do when women cry? They change their minds. They listen. And they did. And they decided that the leadership of Crusade decided they needed to start what was then called the Marriage Preparation and Family Emphasis. And Crusade went to Don and Sally Meredith and said, would you help us start this? And Don and Sally said yes. And at the same time, as we were graduating, we connected because we were connected with Don and Sally. Sally had led Barbara to Christ. Don had discipled me at the University of Arkansas. Don told us about what was happening, where we talked about doing something to prepare Campus Crusade staff for the most important human commitment that 2 people ever make in a lifetime. And instantly we started, and I will never forget the first FamilyLife conference we held with me being the official director of the ministry at that point. It was a required conference by half of the staff from headquarters at Arrowhead Springs. And we had people who had been married anywhere from 1 week to 40 years. And I'll never forget them saying, in essence, this was life-changing. This is what we wish we'd heard 40 years ago. Well, after FamilyLife had been in existence a couple of years, a number of these couples came to us and said, could we go back to the conference and experience it? We've now gotten married. We really feel like we need additional training. Initially, we said no. And then a few of them kind of slipped in the back door, and they'd come up and they'd say, Mr. Rainey, you really changed the conference. I said, no, we didn't change it at all. You changed. It's called reality. You're now married. And they started bringing their family, their friends to the conference, and no longer did they slip in. What had started as primarily a marriage preparation conference now became the weekend to remember. But it started marriage preparation with just a few over here slipping in who were married. Today, it's 90% to 93% married folks, and 7 to 10% who are engaged or contemplating engagement, who come to what I believe is the finest marriage preparation material available anywhere in the world. FamilyLife grew 20, 30, 40% a year. Our conferences were growing faster. They were getting pulled into community, all led by lay couples who wanted the responsibility of making a difference in their communities, marriages and families, and wanted to make a difference in the lives of the family structure in their community. And we were training tens of thousands of people during that period of time. I never forget this. A guy came up at the Vancouver FamilyLife conference, and he opened his binder, and at that point the binder fell open and his notes spilled out all over the floor. And he was down on the floor picking up the pieces, grousing. He said, "Why don't you get it to me in a book that's bound so I can teach this?" Well, you know, the customer's always right. And it was kind of like a 2-by-4 hit me between the eyes, and we created a small group Bible study that has now become the best-selling small group Bible study on marriage and family in the world. It's called the Home Builders Couple Series. Over 2.5 million have been sold. It's been translated into nearly 50 languages and dialects around the world. It's impacted millions of people. We found people holding it next to their heart saying, this has really helped us understand what God's blueprints are for building a marriage and a family. And what do they say? The rest is history. We have now enjoyed many, many years of God's favor upon this ministry. It really has been a remarkable journey and a remarkable adventure.